Statistics Canada reported terrible news for the Canadian economy today. It grew at a meager 1%, a third lower than foreseen, and lower than our population grew. In fact, it was the 8th out of the last 9th economic quarter where our per capita GDP shrunk. It's fallen more than any other G7 country since the year before COVID. This is the direct result of higher taxes on capital gains, on energy, on work. Why won't they accept our common sense plan? Better yet, why don't they call a carbon tax election so we can fix the economy?
There you go.
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
I know the leader of the official opposition doesn't like facts getting in the way of his good Halloween story, but here are the facts. Mr. Speaker, 1.6% inflation. The Bank of...
No one's listening to you, Randy.
Colleagues, it's important for those, of course, to be able to follow and for the chair to be able to follow what's being said. I'm having difficulty hearing this. I know people who are using the translation devices are also having difficulty. The Honourable Minister of
He didn't meet the mic.
Employment and Workforce Development from the top, please.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. There is a lot of chocolate being consumed on the other side. You can see how energized the Conservatives are, but they're upset because we're sharing the facts. 1.6% inflation in this country. Interest rates are down, 47,000 new jobs in the last month. The International Monetary Fund has Canada positioned as the fastest growing economy in the G7 in 2025. What else, Mr. Speaker? We're going to keep supporting Canadians. We're going to build houses from coast to coast. The Conservatives don't need to like it, but that's how we're supporting Canadians each and every day.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the American economy is roaring while the Canadian economy is snoring. In the most recently reported economic quarter, U.S. GDP grew 3 times faster than Canadian, despite our out-of-control population growth. In fact, per-person income is now lower than it was 10 years ago in Canada, while it's gone up 18% in the U.S. The gap between U.S. and Canadian incomes is worse than at any time in the last century. Why won't they call a carbon tax election so Canadians can vote for powerful paychecks that buy affordable homes on safe streets?
Yeah. There you go.
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, it's quite surprising that the Leader of the Opposition isn't taking the bare facts on board, but quite frankly, not just 1.6 inflation or 47,000 jobs. Let's go to what he's trying to distract Canadians from, which as Leader of the official opposition, as somebody who someday wants to sit on this side of the House, will simply not go and do the work to get security clearance. He will not protect his MPs. He will not protect Canadians. Shame on him, Mr. Speaker. Get his security clearance.
They're trying to bait Pierre into saying something that he shouldn't say, but it's not going to work.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canada's collapsing a per-person economy. It means lower wages, which means that Canadians can afford less food, less housing, and governments can afford less for schools and hospitals. It's the direct result. These are first economic data points that have come out since they jacked up the capital gains tax and now driving billions of dollars south of the border. Why don't they follow our common sense plan to axe taxes? In fact, in addition to getting rid of the carbon tax, why not follow our plan to axe the GST on new homes to build 30,000 more per year? It's common sense. Let's bring it home.
There you go.
The Honourable
And he didn't skip a beat.
And Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, we can do the facts game all day long. Let's just focus. The Leader of the Opposition likes to remind people that he has roots in Alberta. So let's talk about the Liberal government's investments in Alberta, Mr. Speaker. $22 billion in clean energy investments for clean electricity, for hydrogen, for greening the grid, for making sure that we have the greenest barrel of oil in the world, Mr. Speaker. The third in the world for foreign direct investment. We are the #1 in the world per capita for foreign direct investment. They don't want to tell Canadians about it. We will, and we'll make sure there are good jobs from coast to coast to coast.
Wow. The other Randy, oh, he's heckling. Speaker wants to mute the mic. He knows we're watching. He knows I'm going to write another strong-worded letter.
Mr. Speaker, more bad news from experts. New Stats Can data shows that per person GDP is shrinking again. for the 8th time in the last 9 quarters. Canadians are getting poorer. This is a made-in-Canada per capita recession that's lasted 2 years, caused by a government that's driven out investment by hiking taxes on everything: income, financial institutions, housing, fuel, and investment. The opposite is happening elsewhere. Yesterday, the U.S. Commerce Department said the U.S. economy grew at 2.8% last quarter. Will the government admit that this is a made-in-Canada per capita recession?
Yeah. Good job, sir.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, it seems that Conservatives can't see past their own doomsday narrative. Canada leads the G7 in reaching a soft landing in the global post-pandemic.
He looks and sounds like a puppet.
And highest
Like a sock with googly eyes on it or something.
To cut interest rates not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times in a row. This is good news for homeowners who currently have mortgages that need renewal and for first-time home buyers. Inflation has fallen to 1.6% in September, marking 9 consecutive months within the Bank of Canada's target range. I count that as good news for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, here's another expert from the Bank of Canada, Deputy Governor Carolyn Rogers. On March 24th, she issued a stark warning. She said Canada is falling behind other countries because of weak business investment, a lack of competition, and a failure to integrate immigrants into the workforce, all responsibilities of this government. She said, and I quote, "I'm saying that it's an emergency. It's time to break the glass." Simple question. Does the government agree with the Bank of Canada that we are in an economic emergency of their making?
Yeah, our Canadian economy is absolutely down the drain.
The Canada governor has also reported numerous times that our government has stuck to its fiscal guardrails, which through that discipline has
The Conservatives find that one pretty funny.
This country. The IMF also, in their World Economic Outlook, projects Canada to have the highest growth in the G7 in 2025. Wages in Canada have outpaced inflation for 20 months in a row. For Canadians, that means more jobs, better wages, and a higher living standard. We should be positive, and I will never apologize for being positive about the future of this country.
We're in a recession, and they don't want to admit it.
The Honourable Member from Durham.
New data from StatsCan confirms
Hey, not so new guy.
Canada GDP recession. Over 8 of the last 9 quarters, per capita GDP is in decline. To put that in practical terms, Mr. Speaker, the average American now earns $20,000 more than the average Canadian. The root cause is the Prime Minister's tax hikes. When will the Prime Minister axe the tax hikes that are making Canadians poorer?
Great question.
The Honourable...
Yeah, he's making a good name for himself.
Mr. Speaker, I'll tell something that the Conservative, they want to acknowledge. The root cause of our success, Mr. Speaker, is our Canadian workers, Mr. Speaker. We have attracted record level of investment in this country. These people are reading, I don't know what. Talk to Volkswagen, talk to Honda, talk to Dow Chemical, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Honourable Member from South Shore of St. Margaret's, please. I'm going to invite the Honourable Minister to start again. The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, I will always stand up in this house to talk about good news about Canada, Mr. Speaker. Exactly. Canadians should be cheering. This is the land of possibility, of opportunities. We have attracted record level of investment, Mr. Speaker, in this country. Just talk to the CEO of Honda, of Volkswagen, of Dow Chemical, of Nordville. People are investing in this country because they believe in our workers. We have the best workers in the world. We have the critical minerals. We have the energy. We have the access to market. We have what we need to win in the 21st century, Mr. Speaker.
Before I return the floor to the Honourable Member,
The Conservatives are laughing hard.
second time, the Honourable Member from the South Shore of St. Margaret's to please not take the floor unless recognized by the Chair. The Honourable Member from Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals across the aisle may be having a party or some kind of celebration, it seems, but in the process, they are cutting the standard of living in Canada. They are slashing the quality of life for people in our country. It's their tax hikes, their increases in the capital gains tax, housing tax, carbon tax that are making life difficult for Canadians across our country. When will they accept some responsibility for what's happened for the last 9 years and axe the tax hikes that are making Canadians poorer?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Leader of the Government in the House.
Talk about celebrations. 10 years ago today, former Conservative MP Dean Del Mastro was found guilty, Mr. Speaker, of violating the Elections Act. That was the Leader of the Conservatives' buddy at the time, Mr. Speaker. He actually went on to become
This guy's like
Secretary to
rat-tattooey, but
and the Parliamentary Secretary,
not a successful chef.
Leader of the Conservative Party, who was advanced to become the Minister responsible for elections. He tried to delete thousands of Canadians from being able to vote, Mr. Speaker. Why should any Canadian have confidence in the Leader of the Conservative Party, Mr. Speaker?
The Honourable Member for...
No.
The Honourable Member.
It's not muted. It's just a French
Mr.
translation.
Speaker, let's be serious. We all know that this government is costing Canadians a lot of money, but now StatsCan is proving it. The last numbers show that per capita GDP has dropped 8 times over the last 9 quarters. What does that mean? That means that GDP has gone up barely by 1% this quarter. In the United States, it's up 3%. The Americans are 3 times luckier than Canadians because of this government. Will the government finally understand that increasing taxes doesn't help Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So on Halloween, my esteemed colleague that I, respect a lot...
At least he said Halloween and not Diwali.
Not going to work. What he can do is ask his colleague, who's sitting right next to him, the member for Brantford-Brant, to rise at least one time in this House to apologize for his words about French last week.
No.
The Honourable...
What a woman. Apologize for what you said last week?
Very well that he apologized, Mr. Speaker.
Come on.
What's the reality here? The reality is that it's time to put the focus on the economic reality. And if this university professor was attentive to reality, then he would see what StatsCan has put forward and that it's real. And even The Economist, I'm sure he's familiar with The Economist. He's probably read at least once in his life. The Economist concluded that Canada is now lower than Alabama, the poorest state in the United States. Is he proud of his record? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Well, let's talk about 3 realities. Economic reality. Interest rates are down, inflation is down, unemployment is down. Let's talk about the reality that the Conservative leader still doesn't understand on Halloween. It's that the Canada Dental Care Plan exists. It hasn't magically disappeared. Third reality, it's that the member for Brantford-Brant has still not apologized in this House.
Oh my God, dude, give it up. You're not getting an apology.
The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, it's Halloween, and the worst house of horrors is right here in Ottawa. It's the Canada Revenue Agency. Fraudsters got $6 million in fake tax returns. The agency didn't even realize that different people were seeing their money paid into the same bank account. And that's not it, Mr. Speaker. There's one particular fraudster who managed to modify his tax returns to try and get $40 million back. And the CRA gave him $10 million before the guy's bank told them that something fishy was going on. How many other cases like this of fraudsters who have 2 hands in the candy jar?
Hey, can we get the blueprints for that?
The Honourable
Asking for a friend.
of National Revenue. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, fraud is completely unacceptable, and I can assure you that we are taking the necessary measures to deal with the situation. Obviously, the CRA, with all the personal information that it has, is target of choice, but it's not the agency that's directly targeted, but often the information that we share as citizens through different systems is more at risk. So personally, we all need to be more careful, but the agency is very vigilant. We have experts who are being very careful, and as soon as fraud is identified, the citizen impacted is informed and the account is blocked, Mr. Speaker.
10 million got taken. So no, you're...
Mr. Speaker.
Detection is not good.
You might think that it's our fault, but we want to know how many other times the agency has been a victim of fraud because there's a lack of verification, because the agency has been hiding the real numbers. Since 2020, in 2020, they've told the Privacy Commissioner there have been 113 cases where private information...
Remember the pay that you would get for not working during the blip?
The agency...
Remember how easy it was to get paid?
Cases, there were more than 31,000 cases.
But when you log into CRA, everything else is so complicated.
True ghost. She's refused to...
they really need to update the CRA website and infrastructure.
Why can't she tell the truth the first time?
And cut like half of its employees.
National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I do what I say what I do, and I'm not hiding from anyone. The law prevents us from discussing specific cases. The member knows that. However, the agency is very well equipped. We have experts. We're working with all kinds of specialists. We're working with other countries as well to share best practices. And there was a meeting just 2 weeks ago in Ottawa, and I can tell you that we're doing what we have to do, and we have the experts that we need. The Honourable Member for Mirabel. Mr. Speaker, we're seeing more and more fraud at the CRA because nobody is doing the necessary verifications, including the Minister, who has the power to request investigations. Yeah. And that's not even counting cases where there was where the agency frauded itself, where we had 330 employees who gave themselves a CERB and had to be fired.
CERB, that's what it was.
Who are guarding the blood bank, Mr. Speaker. The CRA is haunted by problems with verification, with accountability, with transparency, with leadership. It needs a little exorcism, I think. When is the minister going to clean things up?
Ooh.
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue.
It was easier to get CERB than it is to pay your taxes.
The Canada Revenue Agency...
That's not how it should be.
...has 60,000 employees. When we went through COVID, there were a number of countries that envied us because our country, our Liberal government, did what was necessary to help people, to help businesses, and that's why we've had a softer landing than almost any other country in the world. 60,000 employees, and all those who got CERB were verified one by one because... they did what was necessary, and the necessary actions were taken.
No, the government was handing out CERB.